There we go. Okay. I'm trying to learn not to talk with my hands so much, so that video kind of helps me. But if I stand like this, then maybe I won't say a thing, right? Because I need my hands to talk. So, anyway, we are going to do a little bit of an overview of this craziness, before we get started into fats tonight. But why don't we begin with just a quick word of prayer? Heavenly Father, we come together before you tonight just to learn a little bit more about managing our temples for you, Lord. We thank you so much for all the gifts that you've given us in the way of nourishing our bodies, and help us to further understand what it means to properly nourish them in order to serve you even more. Lord, thank you so much for this time. May all our words and actions just be in honor and glory to you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for coming back. Tonight we are going to talk about fat. Yay! And different types of fats and what they all mean. There is a lot of information out there about them, so we are going to kind of just give an overview of them, because it's kind of like Disney. You can't do it all in one day, or you can't do it all in 1 hour, so I chose a few particular things to talk about. But I want to kind of review a little bit about the blood sugar things that we talked about last week, and insulin and pre-diabetes, and the normal glucose levels and things like that, and and how a properly prepared nutrient-dense diet can help you keep your glucose levels stable. When you make the decision to regulate your blood sugar and many other ailments that you have, like over here on this chart from week 1 that we put up there, will begin to diminish. This isn't about doing it for 1 week, as you guys know, and then going back to old habits, okay? This is not a diet program, okay? These are permanent changes that we're talking about. I call it forever nutrition. Honoring God with the choices of what fuels our bodies, and having that discernment and the mindful nourishment, that we were talking about. Those baby steps, it's not about doing everything all at once. It's taking the time and doing one thing at a time and figuring out what you're willing to do and what works for you, right? So to embrace those changes, the times that you're successful and things are going really well. I'm going to share a couple of stories that I've heard so far, but also embracing, some failures, because it's not about us being perfect. We're going to make mistakes, as we make changes. We're going to, go back to something, and we're not ready to make a change in this area. But sometimes it can be really overwhelming hearing some of this information, because I think some of the things that we've been discussing are kind of contradictory to what you've heard the last 30, 40, maybe even 50 years of your life. And so it can be really overwhelming. It can be upsetting for some people, because you've been doing something for a long time, and then you learn it's really not the best way to nourish your body, and sometimes it can be a little tough to hear. But when you think about, how much needless suffering has happened through chronic problems of things that we really shouldn't have been doing, it's the result of the quality of our food supply. We're going to actually talk a little bit more about the quality tonight of fats. So we need to focus on the food that God has supplied to us. And, He created us. He created the foods that we should eat. So it's our responsibility to eat what He's provided for us. Properly prepared, nutrient-dense foods. Whole foods, not fake foods or franken-foods. There's lots of different names for fake foods. But to build up and nourish our bodies, not to tear them down. And as you continue to shop for the foods that are nutrient-dense, you are, I call it your real food radar, okay, is going to start tuning in to what you need to purchase and what you need to just keep on walking by, right? Always think God-made foods, not man-made foods. And then you'll begin to ignore the irradiated, GMO, frankenfoods. So I do want to talk a little bit about genetically engineered foods before we get into fats. Genetically engineered foods, there's 2 main types. There's a herbicide-tolerant crop, okay? Those are able to sustain the heavy spraying, like Roundup Ready crops, okay? You've all heard of Roundup. and Roundup isn't a good thing. There's pesticide-producing crops, okay? These are designed to produce plants or crops to produce their own internal pesticide, okay? Which means that when a bug takes a bite of that plant, that bug dies, okay? Think about that for a minute, what that does to our food supply. So GE, genetically engineered, comes from crops in which genes from one species have been integrated into another species, okay? It's an engineering process that's not precise and there's tons of room for error. And it's a sequence that actually would never happen naturally, right? So engineered. We're going to talk a little bit about cows. Cows that are fed GMO grains, GMO, genetically modified organism, similar to genetically engineered. So cows that are fed GMO grains, right? You've heard of corn-fed cows, right? Cows, by the way, weren't ever meant to have grains. They are grass eaters, okay? They're not corn eaters. So cows that were fed these GMO grains, and I want to say this was back in 1995 when this was actually first reported. I think it was going on for a couple of decades prior to that. But they began developing a host of diseases, okay? Because the GMO, the content of the genetically engineered toxins that were in these crops were beginning to cause problems for these cows, right? So they started having a whole host of diseases: liver disease, mucosa problems, irregular heart function, fertility problems, poor kidney function, and other general what they called abnormal behaviors, all right? So then we're eating the meat and we're drinking the milk from these cows, right? But also those GMO crops are destroying the mineral content of our soil. I think I talked before about the nutrient content of our soil and how that's been diminished over the years due to farming practices. So I think I had said before, the sick soil creates the sick food and creates the sick animals and the sick people. The nutritional differences in the GMO foods are considerable as well. The nutrient content of GMO foods is way down compared to foods that are grown in nutrient-rich, mineral-rich soil. And the GMO stuff that's in these crops is systemic, okay? So it grows inside the plant. It's not something that you can just wash off with a little, fruit and vegetable wash in your sink, okay? It's not like something that is sprayed. It's grown into the plant. So when you talk about making steps, baby steps and making changes, when you hear this information, you have to decide, if you want to continue buying that meat or the milk from those animals that are chock full of the hormones, right? They give them all kinds of hormones, so they reproduce a lot faster, faster than they're normally meant to produce. And then the antibiotics to keep them from being sick, right? So just a little side note that 80% of the antibiotic use isn't even from humans in our country. 80% of it is it's from CAFOs. CAFO is a concentrated animal feeding operation. That's our modern day farming. And 80% of the antibiotics consumed or used in this country happen in those places. Learn what's in your food, folks. All right? Is this new to anybody? I think a lot of people have already heard about antibiotics and hormones and all that kind of stuff, but that's just a little further information. So the quality of the meat is poor, and the fat from those animals is really bad also. But you have to decide if you're willing to make a change in that area. That's one of the first things we actually changed in our household was our animal products. We found a trusted source, and we began purchasing all of our animal products there. So that was our better than step, and we continue to do that. I'm going to talk a little bit about eating out. We were talking a little bit about restaurants before, so some of you might be saying, no, don't go there. I'm not ready to give up my fill-in-the-blank restaurant, right? Well, basically, I joke at home that I've ruined eating out for my family, so why should we just keep that to ourselves? Why shouldn't I just share it with you all, right? So, and maybe you're not ready to hear it, but just like a lot of this information, sometimes you're just not ready to hear it, and you take what is valuable to you and you use it and just let the rest go for now, okay? But it's convenient to eat out, and it's costly. Not just to, our pocketbooks, but our I just said pocketbook, didn't I? Okay. So, I lived in the South, and I don't even know where that came from. I lived in the South for a few years, and it just makes me think of my friend Tina, right? She would say, oh my gosh, pocketbook, I haven't used that word in years. Grab your pocketbook, we're going to go to the Piggly Wiggly. It would be like, come on, Cindy, grab your pocketbook, we're going to the Piggly Wiggly, and push the buggy through the store, right? Anyway, I don't know where that came from, but your wallet. Okay, so it's expensive, our wallets, right? But also to our health. There are better choices that we can make, and you don't really know what's in your restaurant food. Even if you go to the places where they cook in front of you, you still really don't know what's in your food. Restaurants are a business, and they are about making money. They care about their bottom line. Most of them serve the cheapest quality food and charge outrageous prices. Some places are beginning to make changes, and I would encourage you to seek out those establishments that are doing that. You might say, but look at how much I can go to Olive Garden. Sorry if that's your favorite restaurant, but you can go to Olive Garden and they just keep filling your bowl, your salad, unlimited bread, and you think about the quality of that food. It's not really helping any of these things right here when you don't know what's in your food. And maybe it's your Sunday family dinner out and you're committed to going, and it's something that you do every week, whether you go to, Olive Garden or fill in the blank, anywhere that you might go, and that's not an area that you want to change yet. Or when you go there, maybe you look at the menu, you take another look at it. Maybe you can get something similar or make a better than choice when you're there. All restaurants offer that now, okay? They offer lots of different choices, and if you go to a restaurant, they should be willing to work with you and, help you make a better than choice, or with all this education, you should know what your better than choice is when you go to restaurants. But maybe that's not an area you're ready to tackle yet. You're probably thinking, don't even mess with my Sunday brunch, lady, right? Don't even go there. But figure out what you're willing to do. But that is something that is huge, especially in our culture, because we do eat out so much. And think about that. Not about just the foods that you're purchasing at the Piggly Wiggly when you're pushing your buggy down the aisle, right? But when you go out to eat, think about those better than choices, okay? I also want to address quickly finding the happy medium within your household, okay? Most of us here probably have other people living in our homes with us, right? And here we are, we want to make some health changes or nutrition changes, or maybe we've got a child that was diagnosed with an illness and we need to make some nutritional changes for them, and you're trying to get everybody else on board, right? Huge challenges, okay? Because there are other people that you're dealing with, and you have to shop and buy groceries and cook and do all these different things, and how do you keep everybody happy without making 4 different meals, okay? Well, chances are when somebody in the household needs to improve or change their nutrition, the rest of you do too, most likely, okay? I'm just speaking some truth, folks, just speaking truth. You need to be supportive of the folks that you love, okay? Whether you're the one with the health issue or this person next to you has a health issue. I'm encouraging you to be supportive of the person that needs to make those changes and help them any way you can. You might just learn something about your own health, and it might cause you to come face to face with your own nutrition. It might show you something that you really don't want to see either. But there's a reason for that. Maybe you've got some nagging migraines, or you've got some joint pain or reoccurring acne, or you've got something that keeps coming up on your own, and then you realize maybe if you made some changes, it might improve. But I do want you to, reach out, talk to somebody about it. Don't feed your feelings by hitting the drive-through and getting something, making some bad choices because you can't handle emotionally the changes that are happening with your household. And maybe I'm making a bigger deal out of this than need be, but food is very emotional and food is very personal for people. And you put the wall up when you want to talk about your food and how you're eating. You just don't want to make that change. You don't want to face it, but I'm just asking you to be aware of your emotions and your connection with food, okay? Give yourself permission to make the changes. I'm giving you permission to make those changes. It's okay to do that, okay? Those Doritos, they aren't going anywhere, I mean, literally they're not, because they have probably the longest shelf life of most foods out there, okay? So if you need to give them up for a while, they're not going anywhere. They're still going to be there, okay, if you decide you might want them later. But here's something that we did in our house, okay? So I'm the primary shopper, and I buy the groceries. So I only started buying foods when I started becoming aware of the foods that made me feel bad and the foods that actually made me feel better. I started buying more of the foods that were making me feel better and less of the junk. And it wasn't a cold turkey thing. You know, Bren will attest to that. Every once in a while I'd sneak something in, you know, and he'd be like, what's this doing here, you know? I thought we were on this bandwagon. I thought we were doing this, you know? There's no perfection in it. It's just progress, steps in the right direction, right? So, but then what I started to notice is I started asking the other members in my household what foods made them feel better, what foods did they not like, you know? And I started buying the things for them that they wanted. And it was, you know, again, it wasn't 100%, but we were making progress. So hopefully that's encouraging information for you guys as you begin to shop, whether it's for yourself or for it's another family member, okay? Speaking of making changes, I've been hearing stories from you guys. People are emailing me and texting me, and that's not like overwhelming or anything, you know, but from a handful of people, I've heard a few things, and it's pretty good. So one woman told me that she spent the week relaxing before meals and chewing her food slowly. And after a few days, she reported that her GERD was noticeably absent after her meals. And that's just a few days of relaxing. Who's tried to relax before they've eaten and tried to chew their food? Right, 20 times, like 18, 19, 20, come on, right? Okay, so another man had shared with me that he was actually eating less because he was chewing so much more, right? But he didn't have to take a Tums after his meal, right? Some of us just like their candy, right? And I heard from another person that since they started chewing their food, a lot more, that their digestion, specifically their elimination, had improved greatly, right? If you're with me. It's good to go, isn't it, folks? Right? It is so good to go, especially when you haven't been going, right? So this stuff works, right? It works. How much did it cost you to learn this? Didn't cost you a whole lot. All right, so let's talk about I want to talk about fats, but I do want to wrap up with the blood sugar. We were talking about all these levels and the spiking. I just wanted to let you guys know that I think we've all experienced these ups and downs, you know, in our nutrition, right? And making poor choices and maybe not realizing it was a blood sugar issue. And it's like, you know, I had a coffee and a donut, and then like, you know, an hour later, I was like, why am I shaking? What's wrong with me? You know, I need something else, right? But when you do start making those changes in that properly prepared, nutrient-dense diet and balancing out your proteins, carbs, fats, and watching the sugar intake, the things we talked about last week, you're gonna find that your glucose levels will level out. I mean, it does work. Okay, we've been talking about different types of sugars. You know, a couple of us were talking before class, and you know, again, sugar, we're not designed to run on sugar. We're not designed to run on carbs, okay, or that many as we're consuming, and that's what is causing this stuff. Also, poor quality fats. We're gonna talk about that. We have a fat phobia in this country, okay, in this nation, in this room. There's probably a few fat phobic people in here, or you could call them lipids also, right? Fatty acids. Whenever I say fat, lipids, fatty acids, it's the same thing, okay? And our population is a mess. The healthy fatty acid deficiency is epidemic in our country, and it causes a whole host of problems. Some of them might be up there, actually. There's musculoskeletal issues. There's endocrine issues, through thyroid specifically. There is mental health issues related to fatty acid deficiencies. A lot of depression stems from that. Stems from digestion and blood sugar too, but you know, we're talking about foundations. I'm going to go back to the first week I mentioned something about the foundations. I'm gonna draw it out for you guys, because you can kind of see where I'm going with this.